this guy is probably, and I don't say this tongue-in-cheek, one of the most humble people that I've ever met. But here's the difference. And I'm going to go way left turn here for a minute, so bear with me. So when the Tibetan people and Tibetan leadership, along with the Dalai Lama, left Tibet in the 1950s and went to India and were settled in Dharamsala, which is where the Tibetan government in exile and the Dalai Lama reside. It was obviously a pretty tumultuous time, but the Dalai Lama, as the leadership for that religion and that people and that government, was pretty clear. We take a middle path, non-violent, we try to be diplomatic, and that's what we want to do. And that's what we say out loud publicly, that's what we practice privately. This is who we are. And I think the outdoor industry, up to this point, has been very similar. We've been incredibly middle path. We want to be open to all. That's why we say things like access for all. We want to be welcoming regardless of your level of skill to make sure people feel empowered through this process. But going back to the Tibetan people, there is this one tribe of Tibetans called the Khampas. And the Khampas are the warrior class for the Tibetan people. And they've been really clear that while the Dalai Lama might preach a middle path, that they see their one sole mission in the middle of this process to be the warrior class, to poke back politically, to poke back personally, to talk about some of the things that they've gone through as a people, as a government, as a country. And you know, in thinking about our keynote speaker and some of the things that he's done, believe it or not, even though that seems like a very big intro, buddy, there's synergy there. I think put together this event in his backyard during the outdoor retailer show called The Gathering. And it was a pretty simple, straightforward affair. There was a lot of folks from the hook and bullet community, hunters, fishers, people that really focused on that. But the middle path conversations were not happening in his backyard. The conversations that were happening in his backyard were of the warrior class. And the thing that got me thinking about was we can spend a lot of our time trying to find common ground, and I think that's incredibly important. We also have to find the places and the spaces where when it comes to the things that we want to protect, promote, and defend, we have to rely on the warrior class. And as that voice emerges and becomes a little bit more synthesized, especially in today's political and social climate, we rely on people like the person you're about to hear from. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving this man a warm welcome. I think you want to come on up?
Labrīt. Mani sauc Mahting Putelis, un es mīlu šo pasauli. Latvian Commission for Environment? No. Okay, let me try English. I'll roll it. Good morning, and I am Mahting Putelis, and I love this world. I'm grateful to Luis and his team, Sam, for giving me this opportunity. And as this is my first keynote speech ever, I'm going to take a minute and introduce myself properly. Only because I have this conversation every time I meet somebody, every single day. So, my name, Mahting. It's kind of like when you're saying ma and pa for an old-timey person, mother and father. So ma. And ting is kind of like ping pong. You have the T there, so it's Mahting. This keynote's going to be a little bit interactive, and so I want you to actually stand up. And I want you to take 15 seconds and introduce yourself to somebody around you that you do not know, so we can establish a movement in our community. Nice, you got room for the talkers. All right, I'm going to continue. So today I'd like to take us from labels to shared values and discuss a little bit about conservation within the outdoor industry. This is little me, at about 2.5 years old. I have a lot of memories from that time in my life, which is a little surprising. but there's one that stands out for me. We lived in Broad Ripple, Indiana, on the White River. And it's a cold winter morning, and my dad's got me all bundled up and tucked into a sleigh. He hitches the dog to the sleigh, and we're going to go for a walk in the woods. And as we're going through the woods, my dad stops, and he starts rummaging around the base of a birch tree. And he looks back at me and he says, you know, I think I've seen some elves here before. I think they left something behind. Okay? As his hand comes out of the snow, pulls out a chocolate bar. My sense of wonder was born. We shared the chocolate bar, and I was hooked on chocolate and the woods. My sense of wonder led me to Preston College, and I got my first set of labels, and I called myself a hippie. It was followed up by dirtbag. I got a little bit more serious about it, and I became an adventure educator. A whitewater guide. But most central to my daily existence was climber. These two images were taken 10 years apart, almost to the day. On the left, we had just returned from establishing a new line up Gunsight Peak, deep in the Cascade Mountains. On the right, 10 years later, I had shifted my focus and become a commercial photographer, and we had just returned from another first ascent up Mount Stewart, again in the Cascade Range. I even left wild spaces for a little bit and delved into bike racing, mostly trying to avoid getting hit by cars. And in 20 years' time, I've learned one thing. I will never grow a proper beard, and I should never try. No, really, I've learned a couple other things. It doesn't matter if I'm skiing, or running, or hunting. I've learned to suffer in wild places. I even find it fun. During my adventures, I learn about the places I live. I engage my sense of wonder, and I build a sense of place. In this moment, already 14 hours and 55 miles into the Never Summer Ultramarathon, I learned that the finish line was 9 miles away, not 3. And still, I persisted. So, upon settling down in Colorado, and with a growing sense of place, I started hunting. I found that the hunting industry did not seem to have a representation of the type of person I am. So I co-founded Hunt to Eat. It's a brand focused on delivering cool, everyday apparel to the modern hunter. And with that, I added entrepreneur to my list of labels. 5 years later, my designs are conservation conversation starters. Try saying that 10 times fast. I believe that I'm helping hunters put their best foot forward. So we have become a go-to source for organizations to get their message out, and hunters actually like our designs. These are just 3 of our recent designs that help support the Wild Sheep Foundation, the Non-Lead Initiative, and the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. And each of these organizations is making great strides in key conservation values. All right, let's talk about hunting a little more. This is food. Everybody eats food. These are tacos, in particular. Venison al pastor, specifically. And in order to have this, you need to have this. These back straps, tenderloins, and heart, they come from this. This is a beautiful Colorado high country elk And after more than 15 days of hunting, over 200 miles hiked, I came within range of this elk. He was shot on public land, just outside of there. After 9 years of hunting, I finally decided that I had a skill set that's needed to stalk an elk well enough to deliver an ethical shot with a bow and arrow. And part of that skill set was learned through all the time I spent in wild spaces. Whether running ultramarathons, climbing mountains, rafting rivers, or skiing steep couloirs, it's all a learning process. This hunting season in particular was filled with learning, camaraderie, laughter, and lastly, a freezer full of meat. Consider that if you eat meat, you are a hunter. Consider if you eat vegetables, you are a gatherer. I take no exception if you choose to hunt and gather with gun and spade, or if you choose to hunt and gather with dollar bills. I do encourage you to continue to develop a deeper relationship with the food you eat. Knowing your food and the systems that put that food on your plate can be an act of conservation. So again, this next portion is going to be a little bit more interactive. So if you self-identify with any of the labels I'm going to bring up, I want you just to raise your hand. I want you to keep it up and let us all have a look around, and then you put it down. This first one is just a little bit of a test. I want to see if you're all paying attention. And I want to show off my super cute dog. So if you're a dog lover, please raise your hand. Nice, all the cat people stayed home. How many climbers do we have here? Are you a backpacker? Are you a mountain biker? How many anglers do we have here? Oh. And runners? You guys do everything, it seems like. You're gonna ruin my point. How many hunters do we have here? Okay. This one's easy, it's Colorado, so hopefully, are you a skier? Huh? A little less adventurous, are you a snowshoer? And how many of you pick up binoculars and go birding? Okay. Who finds respite in a canoe? Wow. How many golfers are here? Thanks for being here. I used to play a lot in high school, but I haven't played in a while. I still own clubs though.
Does Topgolf count?
Maybe. How many overlanders are here? Welcome. How many of you are ATVers? Okay. How many of you are mechanized boaters who maybe get on a ski every once in a while? And lastly, how many of you are RVers? I've updated my van as of now, so it's a little bit better. Okay, last but not least, how many of you consider yourselves non-consumptive users? I like that. Great. I'm gonna just share this anyway because it's in here. So this is a little piece of writing that I did, and a piece of amazing art that I just had someone create for me. And I'm going to read this piece of writing for you. There is a constant drumming and rumbling in my ears as I careen through the congested cityscape. Its pulsing is like a rabid disco party gone haywire into the early morning hours. The city reverberates through my body. It causes stress and anger and panic. I flee into the mountains. They are my calm refuge. We all seem to be fleeing into the mountains, as we do our cumulative disco beat is snaking its way up the trails. We cut through the landscape with knobby circular saws disguised as tires of mountain bikes. We pick at the earth with the dull shovel blades of hiking boots and trail runners. We slice over burrows with giant knife edges of skis emblazoned with the art depicting the animals who we are displacing. The mountains, the wild spaces, can offer up silence, peace, tranquility, but you have to run pretty far to find these things. The amount of people fleeing the metropolis of Denver, seeking silence in the Front Range mountains, is awe-inspiring for sheer volume. It is also alarming and concerning, and it must be managed better. We go into the mountains hoping to find silence our busy minds. However, it seems that most don't ever silence their busy mouths. The lack of awareness to place as people careen up and down the trails is disturbing. Without quieting down, people will never see their impact. To get close to animals, to see your impact, you have to shut up. When you finally spot the elk, watch them stand up from a midday slumber or stop grazing and pick up their head and gaze in your direction, you will start to see the impact. When that elk stands up, they've increased their caloric burn rate by 25%. Had you been the only person to encounter that elk, it may have had little impact. But when the entire disco party rambles through the woods daily and nightly, you begin to kill the elk. So I was going to say, we've just witnessed that all of our labels divide us into little groups, except for you all do everything, and so we're just a giant group of doers, which is cool. I will say that I think in the industry at large, you will see, if you look around, we are full of silos. Each labeled group has their representative NGO, and they go to battle every day fighting for groups' specific needs and wants. And I truly appreciate all of the groups that are reaching out and starting to build coalitions. However, if we were to actually actualize our political might, we have to build far more reaching coalitions. This was a design I was going to run with for public lands money. However, I bailed on it and left it unfinished. I found it to be limited. And limited is how I would describe the cohesion in the outdoor industry. I do believe that if we move past labels and focus on shared values, we can start to make strides in establishing our political might. So this time, if you agree with these statements, please stand up. So to start, I value wild spaces. Everyone's sitting down, that's great. I value clean air and clean water. No one's going to sit down. I value wild animals. I value biodiversity. Fantastic. I believe we have a jumping off point. You are welcome to take your seats. I believe that we as an industry can unite around these shared values of protecting wild spaces and animals, protecting clean air and clean water. But before we go running away with our newfound shared values, let's take a step back and try and find some clarity. Recently, I'm going to look at my slide over here because it's actually updated. We as an industry have recently started to tout some very impressive numbers. And we're using these numbers to progress our collective political agenda. We have all heard that we are an $887 billion industry. But I want to ask, what does that actually mean? Who does that include? And are we actually ready to utilize that potential power? So, don't kill me for this slide, but the Bureau of Economic Analysis released these numbers. And I know that they differ drastically from the numbers that we tout. As of this morning, I understand that there's yet another set of SCORP numbers coming out that also differ. And now I'm sure that there are people much smarter than me in this room who could run circles around me telling me how we all came up with these slides with these numbers. The numbers aren't actually the point. The point is when I look at this slide, those labeled groups up there weren't very many of you in this room. And I would argue that these labels are not the labels you would readily find at Outdoor Retailer, SIA, or even the SHOT Show. So let's get real. When those of us who represent, in one way or another, a subset of the entire outdoor industry tout these huge numbers, I find it pretty disingenuous. There's currently not a single voice that represents all of us. Not only is that voice not present, but the size of our industry cannot be equated to our political might. We can count on one hand, maybe two, the number of lobbyists who represent us in Washington, D.C. The amount of money that major players in our industry spend on government affairs is minuscule to what they spend in marketing and in terms of competing with our adversaries. So why do we even need to be having this conversation? I, as the owner of Hunt to Eat and Mahting Productions, recognize that without wild spaces and animals, and clean air and clean water, I will be out of business. So it's not simply a want, but it's a necessity that I fight with all of my might and with an impact to my bottom line to protect these things. And I welcome all of you to take that stance as well. I believe that we as a community, including those labeled groups who might not be quite as well represented here, have the courage and tenacity to take on this fight together. So this next phase is going to be what we in the industry call type 2 fun. If you don't know what that is, it's only after the event and in reflection that you come to realize you actually had fun. Wading through chest-deep snow, dirty and loose rocks, sketchy approaches, hikes that seem to never end, and anything that offers overriding sense of doom and despair are clear indicators you're having a type 2 experience. I'm sure some of us already feel that way right now. If we have the courage, will, and ability to tackle complex and daunting tasks, such as climbing Meru, free soloing El Cap, skiing the Lhotse Face, or even car camping with small children, then we can take on this challenge. The days of limited political engagement are gone because these dire times demand that outdoor leaders enter the political arena and lead the fight for wild spaces and animals and clean air and water. The outdoor community must unite, organize, and invest the requisite resources so it can fulfill its potential and become an unrivaled political force capable of protecting the out of doors, which sustain us and our businesses. Outdoor leaders must become as dedicated to the success of the collective fight as they are to the success of their own business enterprises. Now, these are three old concepts. They're the concepts our adversaries have used. I and a growing group of my peers believe that they should be adopted across the entire outdoor industry. On top of these three pillars, I think there are some critical components we must recognize. First, the less representative our community is of the greater community, the less relevant we become. Aldous Huxley said, "We can only love what we know, and we can never know completely what we do not love. Love is a mode of knowledge." So we must go into urban centers and be willing to give people, children in particular, the opportunity to find that sense of wonder and develop a sense of place if we intend for them to become advocates of the outdoors. And lastly, this is going to be tough. We must prepare ourselves to learn from others who are radically different than ourselves. So where do we start? Luis mentioned this, so we ruined the slide a little bit, but it's okay. Over the past year, I've hosted actually 2 events during the Outdoor Retailer Show that have become known as The Gathering. The intention really is to bring together disparate groups. I was glad and lucky that the first time I hosted with the gals from Wilder Goods and Argali Outdoors, and the second time we hosted with the likes of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Patagonia, and New Belgium Brewing. So the coalition is building. The gatherings have been wildly successful in that those who have attended have learned something new about groups of people they previously knew little about. This year, we will continue the tradition, however we're narrowing our focus. In January, we're going to convene a very tight-knit group of thought leaders to hash out some next steps, and ideally we'll deliver some concrete action items this summer to a much larger crowd of engaged doers. And now I welcome all of you to have a seat at the table, because we have much to do. Thanks.
Thanks, dude. That was awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, one more round of applause for this gentleman. You know, it kind of goes without saying that, you know, getting back to my comment about the warrior class, does that make sense now? And some of the things that he's focused on? You know, for the longest time, and this kind of struck me when this article came out, because these conversations are happening at an incredibly high level. Guillaume Chenard penned this article calling the outdoor industry, and these are not my words, but they are his, a bunch of weenies, because we wouldn't activate at the level that Mahting is talking about. And the reality is that beyond that, you have the CEO of REI, Jerry Spitzky, who's trying to find a very clear middle path, saying it's not about being a weenie, but it's about playing to both sides. And my argument, and I think the argument that you just heard very, very clearly is, if we don't stand with intention, neither one of those philosophies will work. You can't burn the bridge and or try to be apolitical without having a direction of travel. And I'm grateful to people like all of you in the room and Mahting for being willing to convene conversations